When my eyes were gouged out, my mother was shopping with my cousin. When I was forced to drink a bottle of acid and died in agony, she snapped impatiently. Kara, can't you be as well? Behaved as Wendy. If you're just going to run away, then don't bother calling me. However, when she saw the crime scene, she rushed outside and threw up. As a criminal psychologist specially hired by the River City Police, how could she feel sick at the sight of her own daughter's body? After the report came in, the police rushed to the scene of my death. The empty building was drafty on all sides, thick with the stench of rotting blood. The blood on the floor was still wet, with swarms of flies clinging to it. The moment Mom saw my body, she froze for a moment. Then, she turned around and ran outside, covering her mouth as she gagged uncontrollably. Officer Zane silently put on a mask and handed her a bottle of water. I watched as she steadied herself before stepping back into the foul-smelling room. The body in front of her had no head, seemingly brutally chopped off at the neck. The upper torso had been split open from the chest, exposing organs that were already decaying. The lower half was a mangled mess of flesh and blood, making it impossible to even determine the victim's gender. As I watched Mom carefully examine the body, my soul felt a quiet ache. It had been so long since we were this close. Every time we met, it always ended with tension and arguments. Mom frowned. Her gaze was fixed on an old scar on the arm. Hope flickered in my eyes. Did she recognize me? I got the scar as a child when I tried to pour her some hot water. I accidentally burned myself. There was no way she could have forgotten. Back then, she had looked at it with such pain and said, "I'll never allow you to be hurt again, Kara." However, after my cousin Wendy Page came to live with us, I was no longer the one she protected. She felt sorry that my cousin had no one and left me to live like an orphan. However, Mom only glanced at the scar briefly before looking away. She looked away without a trace of concern. She frowned at the gruesome body and turned to the medical examiner. "Miss Hudson, any initial findings?" The medical examiner stood up with her brows tightly knitted together. "The victim is a young woman, around 25. She was forced to ingest a corrosive liquid before death. The exact cause will need further examination back at the station." She paused for a moment, then forced out through clenched teeth. She was also subjected to severe sexual assault and abuse before she died. Mom's eyes reddened when she heard that. Judging from the condition of the body, the killer was acting out of rage. Such a young girl. What a tragedy. My dear mother had always been deeply empathetic. She could grieve the loss of a young life like this. Yet she had never once shown me the same compassion. I studied the sympathetic look on her face. If she knew the victim was me, would her eyes still turn red? Of course not. She would probably feel relieved to be rid of a daughter she found so bothersome. Even when my cousin and her friends were picking on me, Mom had only looked at me with disgust and said, "Kara, can you stop lying? I'd be grateful enough if you weren't the one bullying Wendy." In Mom's eyes, even the victims in her cases seemed to matter more to her than I ever did. Her phone rang. When she looked at the screen, a faint warmth appeared on her face. I leaned in. It was Wendy. She was asking whether Mom would be coming home for dinner. Mom sent a voice message back. Her voice was softer than anything I had ever heard from her. "Sweetie, I've got a tricky case on my hands tonight. Don't wait for me. Take care of yourself. Just tell me what you want to eat, and I'll get it for you." Officer Zane, who stood beside, let out a chuckle. "Moira, so you and Kara made up. I thought you were still holding a grudge against the girl. Moms and daughters are close at heart. Any conflict will soon be forgotten." Mom pressed her red lips together and said in a low voice, "Wendy is my one and only daughter. Wesley, don't bring up Kara again. She ran away from home this time. She's been missing for 5 or 6 days. She didn't even go to her father's memorial. I wanted to tell her that I didn't run away from home. I just couldn't ever go back again."